Commander Vrechthel had been a soldier for more than 200 years. His gray-scaled body carried the marks of countless battles. Deep scars ran across his chest and arms. His 4 eyes had seen things that would break most creatures. He had watched his own ship explode around him and still found a way to survive. He had walked through fire and ice and the emptiness of space itself. Nothing had ever truly frightened him until the humans captured him. The battle near the Kepler belt had been quick and brutal. His patrol ship had been outnumbered 3-1. The humans had disabled his engines with precise shots, then boarded his vessel before he could activate the self-destruct. They had taken him alive, which was against everything he understood about war. The Corvani way was simple. You fought until you won or died. Prisoners were a waste of resources. Enemies who surrendered were executed quickly and without cruelty. It was efficient. It was clean. It was the way things had been done for thousands of years. The humans did not seem to understand this. They brought him aboard their ship, a vessel called the USS Horizon, and placed him in a room that made no sense. The walls were painted in soft colors. The bed was covered in thick, cushioned material. There was a window that showed the stars sliding past. A small machine in the corner could produce water at any temperature he wanted. Vrechthel spent the first day waiting for the torture to begin. It never came. On the second day, a young human female came to visit him. She had hair the color of dark rust and spots scattered across her nose and cheeks. Her eyes were a strange greenish-brown, and she smiled at him when she entered the room. "Good morning, Commander," she said. "I'm Lieutenant Katie Morgan. I've been assigned as your liaison during your stay with us." Vrechthel studied her from across the room. She was small by Corvani standards, barely reaching his shoulder. Her uniform was neat but soft-looking, without any armor or visible weapons. She did not look like a soldier. "What is a liaison?" he asked. "I'm here to help you," Katie explained. "If you need anything, you can ask me. If you have questions about what's happening, I'll answer them as best I can. My job is to make sure you're comfortable. I am a prisoner." "Yes, and you wish to make me comfortable?" Katie nodded as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "You're still a person, Commander. You have rights. Just because we're on different sides doesn't mean we have to treat each other badly." Vrechthel had no response to this. It was so far outside his understanding that he could not even begin to process it. Over the following days, Katie visited him regularly. She brought him things to read about human culture. She explained their customs and traditions. She answered his questions with patience and honesty, even when those questions were about military matters that she probably should have kept secret. He learned that the humans were taking him to a place called Starbase 11. There, he would be exchanged for human prisoners held by the Corvani Empire. The process would take about 2 weeks. "Why tell me this?" Vrechthel asked on the third day. "I am your enemy. This information could be useful to my people." Katie sat down in a chair across from him. She had a habit of making herself comfortable in his presence, as if she did not consider him a threat at all. It was either very brave or very foolish. "You're a soldier who got captured," she said. "That doesn't make you evil. The war makes us fight each other, but that doesn't mean I have to hate you personally. You were just doing your job. I'm doing mine. And your job is to be kind to me?" "My job is to be decent to you," Katie corrected. "There's a difference between kindness and basic decency. You're a living being far from home, stuck on an enemy ship, probably expecting the worst. The least I can do is treat you with some respect." Vrechthel thought about this for a long time after she left. His people had been fighting the humans for 17 years. The Corvani High Command described them as soft, weak, overly emotional creatures who had somehow stumbled into space travel, despite their obvious inferiority. They were said to be easy to frighten, quick to surrender. and lacking in proper warrior spirit. None of this matched what Foretold was experiencing. On the fifth day, Katie arrived with an unusual expression on her face. She seemed almost nervous, which was the first time he had seen her anything less than perfectly calm. "The captain has a request," she said. "He would like to invite you to dinner in the officers' mess tonight. It would be you, him, and some of the senior staff. A chance to share a meal and talk." Foretold blinked all four of his eyes at once. "You wish me to eat with you?" "If you're willing. Our doctor has checked, and most human food is safe for Corvani to eat. Nothing poisonous or harmful. It would be a gesture of goodwill between our peoples." "I am a prisoner," Foretold repeated. "A captured enemy. And your captain wishes to share food with me?" "That's right. In Corvani culture, sharing food was a sacred act. It was done only with family, close allies, or those you intended to honor above all others. The idea of sharing food with an enemy was not just strange, it was unthinkable. But Foretold was also curious. He had learned almost nothing useful about humans during his time aboard this ship. Their behavior confused him at every turn. Perhaps sitting at their table would reveal something important. "I will attend," he said finally. Katie's face lit up with that strange smile again. "Wonderful. I'll come get you at 1800 hours. That's 6 in the evening, ship time. I understand your time measurements. Right, of course." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Commander, I know this is all very strange for you, but try to keep an open mind tonight. Human meals are, well, they might not be what you're expecting. I have eaten field rations from 11 different species," Foretold said. "I am not easily surprised by alien food." Katie made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We'll see about that." She left him alone with his thoughts. Foretold stood at the window and watched the stars pass by. He had faced death more times than he could count. He had stared into the void of space and felt nothing but cold determination. For some reason, the thought of dinner with humans made his stomach feel strange. Katie came to get him exactly when she had promised. She was wearing a slightly different uniform now, with shinier buttons and a small decoration on her chest that Foretold did not recognize. "Ready?" she asked. "I am prepared," Foretold said, which was not quite the same thing. They walked through the corridors of the ship together. Human crew members passed them going the other way, and Foretold noticed that none of them seemed afraid of him. Some nodded politely. Others smiled. One young male actually waved at him like they were old friends. It was deeply unsettling. The officers' mess was located near the center of the ship. It was a large room with a long table in the middle and smaller tables around the edges. The walls were decorated with images of planets and stars, and what appeared to be human sailing vessels from their ancient history. Soft light came from panels in the ceiling, and the air was warm and somehow pleasant. About a dozen humans were already present. They stood when Foretold entered the room, all of them rising to their feet at once. This was a sign of respect on many worlds, including his own, and it caught him by surprise. The captain stepped forward. He was an older male with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. His uniform was more decorated than the others, marking his rank clearly. He extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. "Commander Foretold, thank you for joining us. I'm Captain Daniel Hughes." Foretold had studied human customs during his captivity. He reached out and grasped the captain's hand briefly, trying to apply the right amount of pressure. Human hands were soft and warm, so different from Corvani scales. "Thank you for the invitation, Captain. Please, have a seat." Hughes gestured to an empty chair near the center of the table. "We're honored to have you with us tonight." Foretold sat down slowly, his eyes moving constantly around the room. Old habits died hard. He noted the exits, counted the humans present, and estimated his chances of escape if things went badly. They were not good odds, but knowing them made him feel slightly better. The table was covered in dishes. This was the first thing that truly confused him. Kovanni meals were simple affairs. A single bowl of nutrient paste, properly calibrated for whatever task lay ahead. One color, one texture, one purpose. What lay before him now was something completely different. There were dishes of every color. Red and brown and green and yellow and white and orange. Some were steaming, sending small clouds of vapor into the air. Others were cool and still. The textures varied wildly. Some foods looked smooth, others rough. Some appeared wet, while others seemed dry and crumbly. And the smells. His olfactory slits flared open before he could stop them. Dozens of different scents filled his senses, mixing together into something overwhelming and complex. He had never experienced anything like it. "We weren't sure what you would like," said a young officer sitting across from him. His name tag read L.T. Costa, so Chef prepared a variety. "Chef," Vrechthel repeated. "Petty Officer Alma Davis," Katie explained from her seat beside him. "She runs the galley. That's our food preparation area. She's the best cook in the whole fleet." As if summoned by her name, a large human female emerged from a side door. She was carrying yet another dish, this one steaming heavily and smelling strongly of something rich and savory. Her skin was dark brown, her arms were thick with muscle, and she wore a white garment over her uniform. She set the dish down at the center of the table with obvious pride. "Commander," she said, looking directly at him. "I'm Alma. I did a lot of research on Corvani biology before tonight. Everything on this table is safe for you to eat. No allergies, no toxins, nothing that will hurt you." She paused. "But I should warn you, human food is probably very different from what you're used to." Vrechthel looked at the mountain of dishes before him. "I have eaten field rations from 11 different species during my military career. I have consumed Tyrellian fungus paste and Vexari protein slurry. I am not unfamiliar with alien cuisine." Several of the humans exchanged looks with each other. Their expressions were strange, almost knowing, as if they were sharing some private joke that Vrechthel did not understand. "Well then," Captain Hughes said, picking up a small metal tool with pointed ends. "Let's eat." Vrechthel watched carefully as the humans began to serve themselves. They used various tools to move food from the shared dishes to their own plates. There seemed to be rules about which tool went with which food, but he could not quite figure out the pattern. Katie noticed his hesitation. "Here, let me help you." She reached across and began placing small amounts of different foods onto his plate. "This is roasted chicken. It's meat from a bird we raise for food. These are mashed potatoes, a vegetable that grows underground. Then we cook it and mash it until it's smooth. This is gravy. It's a sauce made from meat juices. These green things are called broccoli. And this yellow square is cornbread." None of these words meant anything to Vrechthel. The explanations raised more questions than they answered. What was a bird? Why would you mash a vegetable? What were meat juices? But he was a warrior of the Kovanni Empire. He had faced worse challenges than strange food. He picked up one of the metal tools, the one with 4 pointed ends, and cut a small piece of the thing called chicken. The texture surprised him immediately. It was soft but fibrous, falling apart easily under the pressure of his tool. He raised it to his mouth. "Here goes nothing," Katie said quietly. Vrechthel placed the chicken in his mouth and began to chew. For exactly 3 seconds. Nothing happened. Then his entire world changed forever. The sensation started at the front of his mouth and spread backward like a wave. It moved through his entire body in less than a heartbeat. Every nerve ending he possessed seemed to wake up at once. Vrechthel had eaten food his entire life. 200 years of meals, 3 times a day, every single day. But he had never experienced anything like this. Corvani nutrient paste was designed for one purpose, only to keep the body functioning. It had no taste, no sensation. You put it in your mouth, you swallowed it. And that was the end of the process, Don. This was something entirely different. The chicken was salty and rich, and somehow warm in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. There was fat in it, melting on his tongue, coating the inside of his mouth with smoothness. There was something else too, something he had no words for, a deep, complex sensation that seemed to have layers within layers. His four eyes went wide. His spinal ridge, which ran from the back of his skull to his lower back, stiffened completely. The piece of chicken fell from his suddenly nerveless fingers and dropped to the plate with a soft sound. "Commander?" Katie's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you all right? Is something wrong?" Rekthal gripped the edge of the table with both hands. His claws dug into the wood, leaving small marks. His cardiovascular system was racing. He could feel both of his hearts pounding in his chest, one slightly faster than the other. His scales had changed color, shifting from their normal gray to a deep purple that spread across his neck and face. "What?" he managed to say, his voice rough and strange. "What is this?" Lieutenant Costa looked confused. "It's chicken. You know, the bird meat that Katie mentioned? This is food, yes?" Rekthal looked down at his plate. The chicken sat there innocently, looking no different than it had a moment ago. But now he knew what it contained. Now he understood what it could do. "This is what you eat?" he asked slowly. "This is what humans consume every day." "Well, not chicken every day," Alma said from her position near the kitchen door. She looked concerned, her brow wrinkled with worry. "We try to vary the menu. Sometimes it's beef, sometimes fish, sometimes... There is more than this?" Rekthal interrupted. His voice had gone higher than normal. "There are other things, other foods that do this?" Captain Hughes leaned forward in his chair. His expression was serious. "Commander, I need to know if you're in distress. Should I call our medical officer? Is the food hurting you somehow?" "I am not injured." Rekthal took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. His hands were still shaking. His scales were still purple. "I was not prepared. I did not know." "Didn't know what?" Katie asked gently. Rekthal searched for the right words. It was difficult because he was trying to describe something that had no equivalent in his language. Kovani food is designed for efficiency. It contains all necessary nutrients in the correct amounts. It keeps the body strong and healthy. But it contains no... He paused, struggling. No experience. No sensation. You put it in your mouth and swallow it, and that is all. There is nothing else. No flavor? Katie suggested. Flavor. Rekthal repeated the word, tasting it. It felt important. It felt like a key to something vast and unknown. "Yes, I think that is the word. Flavor. That is what I am experiencing. Flavor." He looked at the humans around the table. They were all watching him with various expressions: concern, curiosity, sympathy, and something that might have been amusement. "You experience this at every meal?" he asked. "Usually, yes," Captain Hughes said. "Every day?" 3 times a day. "For your entire lives?" "That's right." Rekthal felt something shift inside him. Some understanding that he could not quite grasp yet. He looked down at his plate again. The mashed potatoes sat there, white and smooth, covered in brown gravy. The broccoli was bright green, almost cheerful looking. The cornbread was yellow and crumbly. He reached for the mashed potatoes. "Commander, maybe you should take it slow," Katie said. "Your body is clearly reacting strongly. We don't want to overwhelm you." But Rekthal was already bringing the fork to his mouth. He was a warrior. He had never retreated from a challenge in his life. And he needed to know. He needed to understand what else was possible. The mashed potatoes were different from the chicken. They were creamy and smooth, almost silky on his tongue. They had a subtle, gentle taste, not as strong as the chicken, but somehow deeper. The gravy added something else entirely. It was rich and savory, with complex notes that seemed to unfold the longer he held the food in his mouth. His secondary heart began to beat faster than his primary. This was a stress response that only happened in extreme situations. The last time it had occurred was during a hull breach on his third ship. He tried the broccoli next. It was crisp and fresh, with a slight bitterness that contrasted sharply with the smoothness of the potatoes. It was almost like eating a different meal entirely. How could two foods be so different and still exist on the same plate? His scales shifted through 3 different colors in rapid succession: purple to blue to green and back again. The cornbread was crumbly and slightly sweet. It fell apart in his mouth in the most pleasant way, releasing tiny bursts of flavor with each bite. It was nothing like anything else he had eaten tonight. It was nothing like anything he had eaten ever. His vision began to blur slightly at the edges. "Okay, we should definitely call medical," Katie said, standing up from her chair. "Commander, you're having some kind of reaction." But Vrechthel was already reaching for another dish. This one contained strips of meat covered in a thick, reddish-brown sauce. The smell alone made his head spin. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alma stepped forward. "Those are barbecue ribs. And Commander, I really think you should wait before." He bit into one before she could finish her sentence. And that was when Commander Vrechthel, veteran of 32 combat engagements, conqueror of the 9th moon of Krellis, survivor of the Void March, hero of the Corvani Empire, completely lost control of himself. The barbecue hit him like a plasma blast to the chest. The sweetness came first thick and deep, coating his entire mouth instantly. Then came the smoke, a taste he had never imagined could exist in food. It was like breathing in the aftermath of a fire, but somehow pleasant. Then the heat arrived, a gentle burning that spread across his tongue and down his throat. And beneath all of that was the meat itself, tender and rich and falling apart between his teeth. The sauce clung to his lips and fingers. It dripped down his chin, leaving sticky trails on his scales. The meat separated from the bone so easily that it felt almost wrong, like the food was giving itself to him willingly. Commander Vrechthel burst into tears. The humans at the table froze. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They all stared at the ancient warrior as clear fluid leaked from all 4 of his eyes and rolled down his purple-flushed face. "Oh my God," Lieutenant Costa said finally. "Is he crying? The alien commander is actually crying?" "We made a war hero cry with barbecue," someone at the end of the table whispered. "Chef, I think you broke him." Alma stood completely still, her hands pressed against her mouth. She looked horrified and proud at the same time. If such a combination was possible, Vrechthel did not care about his dignity anymore. He had abandoned it the moment the barbecue touched his tongue. The tears flowed freely, a biological response that he had not experienced since he was a small child. His entire body was vibrating at a cellular level. His scales were cycling through colors so fast that he probably looked like a broken light display, and he could not stop eating. He grabbed another rib, then another. The sauce covered his hands completely now. It was getting on his uniform, on the table, probably on the floor. He did not care. He could not care. All that mattered was getting more of this impossible sensation into his body. "Medical to the officer's mess," Captain Hughes said into a small device on his wrist. "Not an emergency, but please hurry." "I don't need medical attention," Vrechthel tried to say, but his voice cracked badly. Sauce was getting in his mouth between bites, mixing with the tears that were now dripping off his chin. I don't need help. He looked at the table, at all the dishes he had not yet tried. There were so many of them. So many colors and textures and unknown possibilities. I need to know what else there is. Katie had moved closer to him. She put a gentle hand on his arm, which was a bold move considering how unstable he probably appeared right now. Commander, listen to me. Your vital signs are going crazy. I can see it just by looking at you. Your hearts are beating too fast. Your scales are changing colors too quickly. Your pleasure response is spiking into dangerous territory. I don't understand. If you keep eating, you might actually hurt yourself. Your body isn't used to this. You could go into some kind of shock. Rekthal stared at her with all four of his tear-filled eyes. You are telling me that your food is so good that it could kill me? Apparently, yes. He started to laugh, thought it was not a sound that Corvani typically made. Laughter was considered a sign of weakness, a loss of emotional control. Warriors did not laugh. Commanders especially did not laugh. But Rekthal had heard humans do it many times during his captivity, and now he understood why. Sometimes an emotion was too big to keep inside. Sometimes it had to come out somehow. He laughed until his sides ached. He laughed until he could barely breathe. He laughed until fresh tears joined the old ones. And he could not tell anymore whether he was crying from the pleasure or the laughter or both. The humans watched him with expressions, ranging from concern to amazement to barely hidden smiles. My people, Rekthal said when he could finally speak again. His voice was rough and strange, not like his voice at all. My people have been fighting your species for 17 years. We believed you were soft, decadent, weak. We thought your love of comfort made you inferior as warriors. He picked up a napkin from the table and tried to wipe some of the sauce from his face. It did not work very well. The sauce had gotten everywhere. We did not understand, he continued. You are not decadent because you are weak. You have simply discovered something worth living for. Something my people forgot long ago, if we ever knew it at all. Captain Hughes spoke carefully. Commander, I think you need to rest. Our doctor will be here soon. I need to taste more. That's exactly what you should not do right now. But there is so much left. Rekthal gestured at the table with sauce-covered hands. You said there were other foods. Other flavors. How can I stop now when I have barely begun? Because your body is not equipped for this, Katie said firmly. Kovani evolved without experiencing pleasure from food. Your nervous system is overloading. You need time to adjust. The door opened and a human female in a different uniform entered. She was carrying a bag of equipment and moving with purpose. This had to be the medical officer. What's the situation? She asked, her eyes immediately fixing on Rekthal. The hedonic overload, Captain Hughes said. He's been eating dinner. The doctor's eyebrows rose. Just eating dinner? It's his first time experiencing flavor. The doctor moved toward Rekthal with professional calm. Commander, I'm Dr. Patricia Shelton. I need to examine you. Can you tell me how you're feeling? I feel like I've been reborn, Rekthal said. I feel like everything I knew about the universe was wrong. I feel like I want to eat that entire table, and then find another table and eat that one too. Dr. Shelton nodded slowly. Right, so definitely hedonic overload. I'm going to need you to come with me to the medical bay. Will there be food there? Absolutely not. Rekthal looked at the table one last time. All those dishes he would never taste. All those experiences he would never have. It felt like a tragedy. It felt like losing a battle he had not known he was fighting. But he was also a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. Even enemy orders, when resistance was pointless. Very well, he said, standing up slowly. His legs were shaky. His whole body felt strange and new. "I will go with you." He paused at the door and turned back to look at Alma Davis. "Chef," he said, "that was the greatest moment of my life." Alma smiled at him. "You haven't even tried dessert yet." Rekthale had no idea what dessert was, but the way she said it made his scales flush purple all over again. The medical bay was quiet and white and completely boring. Rekthale lay on a bed while Dr. Shelton ran various scans over his body. Small machines beeped around him. The lights were too bright, but none of that mattered because he could still taste the barbecue. "Your neural pathways are extremely active," the doctor said, looking at a screen filled with numbers and lines. "Your pleasure centers have been stimulated beyond anything in my reference data for Kovani biology. To be honest, I'm amazed you're still conscious. Is that bad? It's not great. Your brain essentially received more positive input in 20 minutes than it typically processes in a year. Maybe longer." She made some notes on her device. "You'll be fine, but I want to keep you here for observation. And I strongly recommend moderation going forward." "Moderation?" "Start with simple foods. Plain things. Work your way up to the more complex flavors slowly over time. Let your system adjust." Rekthal thought about this. "Are there foods more simple than what I ate tonight?" "Much simpler. Plain bread, steamed vegetables, unseasoned meat. And are there foods more complex?" Dr. Shelton looked at him with an expression he could not read. "Commander, you haven't even scratched the surface. There are thousands of different cuisines on Earth alone. Italian, Mexican, Japanese, Indian, Thai, French, Ethiopian, Korean, the list goes on and on. Each one has hundreds of dishes. Maybe thousands. That is not possible." "I promise you, it's true." Rekthal stared at the ceiling. "Thousands of cuisines. Thousands of dishes in each cuisine. Millions of different flavors waiting to be discovered. The scale of it was impossible to comprehend." "And dessert?" he asked. "What is dessert?" The doctor smiled. "Dessert is sweet food that you eat at the end of a meal. Cakes, pies, ice cream, chocolate. What is chocolate?" "Oh, Commander." Dr. Shelton shook her head slowly. "You're not ready for chocolate. Nobody's first flavor experience should be chocolate. That would be like..." She searched for a comparison. "Like learning to swim by jumping into the deepest ocean." Rekthal filed this information away. Chocolate was powerful. Chocolate was dangerous. Chocolate was something he needed to experience eventually. Katie came to visit him later that night. She brought a chair into the medical bay and sat beside his bed like they were old friends. "How are you feeling?" "Strange," Rekthal admitted. "Different. I'm not the same person who sat down at that table. Food has a way of changing people. On Earth, meals are more than just nutrition. They're social experiences, family bonding, cultural traditions. Some of our happiest memories are connected to food. We have nothing like this. Kovani eat alone, quickly, without conversation. Nutrient paste requires no preparation and creates no memories. It simply keeps us alive." Katie was quiet for a moment. "That sounds lonely. I never thought so before tonight." Rekthal turned his head to look at her. "Lieutenant Morgan, may I ask you something?" "Of course. How do you accomplish anything? How do you fight wars and build ships and explore the galaxy when you have this? If I could eat food like that 3 times every day, I would never want to do anything else." Katie laughed softly. "That's what I love about humans. We can enjoy something completely and still move on to other things. A good meal doesn't stop us from working hard. If anything, it gives us something to work toward. The promise of dinner makes the day more bearable." Rekthal considered this. It was a strange philosophy, but it had a certain logic to it. Over the next several days, Katie visited him often. She told him about Earth and its many cultures. She described holidays built around food: Thanksgiving with its turkey, Christmas with its cookies, summer barbecues with family and friends. She explained how humans had developed cooking as an art form, with professional chefs and cooking competitions and restaurants that people would travel thousands of miles to visit. Each conversation made Rackthale more certain of what he needed to do. The prisoner exchange was scheduled for 10 days after the dinner. Rackthale would be transferred to a neutral station near the border, where a Kovani ship would take him home. He would file his report with High Command and return to active duty. But he knew now that he could never go back to the life he had known before. On the morning of the exchange, Alma Davis came to see him. She was carrying a small package wrapped in strange material. "I made you something," she said. A care package. Recipes written out in simple terms. Dried spices that should survive the trip home. Some vacuum-sealed samples of different foods. They won't be as good as fresh, but they'll give you something to remember us by. Rackthal took the package with trembling hands. It was light, but it felt like the most valuable thing he had ever owned. "I am in your debt, Chef Davis." "No debt. Just share it with your people. That's payment enough." The exchange ceremony took place on the neutral station. Rackthal stood in full ceremonial armor, facing the Kovani officers who had come to retrieve him. Behind him, the crew of the USS Horizon had gathered to see him off. It was not protocol for humans to attend such events, but Captain Hughes had insisted. Rackthal turned to address them one final time. "When I return to my people, I will make a full report to High Command. They will expect tactical assessments, cultural analyses, strategic recommendations about human weaknesses." Captain Hughes nodded. He understood how these things worked. "I am going to tell them that this war must end." Silence fell over the gathered crowd. Even the Kovani officers looked surprised. "Commander," the senior Kovani officer said carefully, "what are you saying?" "I am saying that we have been fighting the wrong battle. We have spent 17 years trying to destroy these people, when we should have been trying to understand them. They have something we lost long ago. Something we need. And what is that?" Rackthal thought about chicken and mashed potatoes and barbecue ribs. He thought about the way Katie smiled, and the way Alma cooked, and the way Captain Hughes had welcomed an enemy to his table. He thought about flavors he had never imagined, and pleasures he had never known existed. "Joy," he said simply. "They have joy, and they have been trying to share it with us all along." He walked toward the Kovani ship, carrying his small package of spices and recipes. The humans watched him go. He could feel their eyes on his back. At the airlock, he turned one final time to look at Katie Morgan. "Perhaps we will meet again, Lieutenant." "I hope so, Commander. Under better circumstances." "Under any circumstances," he said. "You have changed me. All of you have. I entered this ship as a prisoner of war. I leave it as something else entirely." "What's that?" Rackthal thought about his answer carefully. He wanted to get the words exactly right. "I leave as a student," he said. "A student of joy. I have much yet to learn." He stepped through the airlock, and the door closed behind him. But he knew, with absolute certainty, that this was not an ending. It was a beginning. The war between humans and Kovani would not end quickly. Such things never did. But somewhere in the galaxy, a single warrior carried a package of spices and a revolutionary idea. He carried the memory of flavors that had nearly killed him with pleasure. He carried the hope that his people might one day discover what they had been missing for thousands of years. And in his pocket, carefully preserved, was a handwritten recipe for barbecue ribs. Signed at the bottom with a simple message from Alma Davis. It read, "Food is love made visible. Share generously." Rackthal did not fully understand those words yet. but he intended to spend the rest of his life learning what they meant.